Welcome back to the studio, everyone. I'm Eric C. Jackson. Today, I want to go over underexposed photography, which is something that I've run into before, and I made a purchase recently to help me avoid this issue. But ultimately, what happens is you photograph something, there's not enough light coming into the camera. And so when you get home and you look at your work, like really look at your work, you have to brighten up the scene sometimes in places, but sometimes overall the entire thing needs to be brightened. So what happened with this particular photo that we're going to work on is I've worked on it some, but I can tell that I'm going to run into a lot of noise, a lot of graininess on the photo. And that's what happens when you really underexpose your photography. When you go to brighten it, you're going to get a lot of noise, especially in your shadows. And so that's what I ran into with this particular photo. Now, I took this one in 2021, but as I'm going through all of my folders of photography, there's some that I want to save or try to save, even though they're underexposed. But I do have, let me show you guys the light that I bought. All right, so I was working with these. This is a 45-watt bulb that I use for my studio lights. And normally I would set up two umbrella lights with these, and it's still not enough light. So what you want to do is you want to keep your ISO as low as possible to avoid the camera noise. But then that means that you need to have more light on the subject in order to get a clear photo. So a few weeks ago, I went ahead and upgraded. I actually ordered almost from the same company, I guess. It's pretty close. But these are what I ordered. These are 135 watt bulbs. And for comparison, there's a comparison. So 135 watt bulb. This is a 45 watt bulb. It's noticeable. It's a noticeable difference. So now when I go into new projects, I actually bought two of these, two of the larger bulbs. I should be able to avoid that issue, right? And if you guys hear my neighbors in the background, I apologize for that. But there's the bulbs. All right, so we're going to be working on the Asus monitor today. And this is the ProArt version, which is pretty good. All right, let me get my cursor over here. Okay, and as I explained in my previous podcast, I have set up or figured out how to set up my iPad on the stream so that I can use it if I need to. But anyway, here's the original raw file here. I made a copy, so if I run into any mistakes, I won't be really upset. But I'm going to go ahead and open it in Camera Raw and show you guys what the issue is. Now, if you have this little triangle with an exclamation point come up in Camera Raw, you would just update it to the current version, and it'll do that in the background. That's just because every time the software comes up with an update, the adjustments work a little bit differently. But if you open up a file from 4 or 5 years ago in Camera Raw, it's not going to have those updates applied. So you would just press that little icon down there in the corner. And it doesn't make any major changes as far as I've seen, but it just updates it to the current version of wherever Adobe Camera Raw is right now. What I'm going to do with this particular copy is I'm going to turn off the resize to fit, because I don't need it to be a large file. All right, so now we're back to the standard 12 by 18. All right, and so lighting. I want to show you guys where this started. So I'm going to go over here in the corner and hold down on the eye tool, or the little eye icon. And that takes the adjustments away. So yeah, that's bad. That's how dark the original file was. So it's very underexposed, and it needs some work. It definitely needs some work. So once I cranked up the exposure a little bit over 2 stops, the highlights, I brought them up way up. Shadows, like here's 0, right? And then that's the brightness on it, because I do like the color down here. But the problem is that's a lot of noise. Like a whole lot of noise. So my shadows adjustment, I would have to, if I take it back down to 0, then it's not so pronounced. And obviously you would have to print this, do a test print of this to see, or of whatever photo you have, to see if there's too much camera noise in your especially in your shadows. But if you look at the print as a whole, like my highlights aren't really bad at all. But anytime you start coming into shadows, if you try to brighten it up too much, you can see the camera noise a little bit here, but it's not terrible. But again, if I crank up the shadows back up to 100, it's plus 100, that you see all the noise. And that's what you don't want to see. And then over here you have color aberrations really, really badly. So this is why, especially like this one, my ISO is 400, which isn't great, but it's not terrible. It's not, ISO 400 is not going to ruin your photograph with a quality camera. The problem is that, again, it was very much underexposed. And so now when I boost the shadows, especially the plus 100, like all the little graininess and color aberrations they're gonna show up. So my shadows, I lower them back down. And I guess at plus 15 is not too bad. All right, so that's the thing that you have to work on or keep an eye on when your photograph is underexposed. The other thing is let me zoom back out here, hold on, is the color. Also, I can hold down or click down on the eye tool or the eye icon, and there's the color shift. Like the color originally is too saturated, too much magenta. going over into red, and then there's a lot of yellow in the photograph. And so I went ahead and changed the color temperature, and then took the vibrance and the saturation down to sort of mute the color a little bit. But right now my color temperature is at 4850, and once you move that temperature, there's the yellow coming back. Now, if that's the look that you want, go for it. Right? But for me, I wanted it to be more magenta and have more of the green come out into the photograph. So there's that. All right. And then I also have effects, which not really major. Obviously texture is going to bring the texture out. Any like details, fine details, that's going to exaggerate it. So you want to add texture if necessary, but you don't want to overdo it. And then you also have clarity. I only added that +10. Changes the contrast around the edges of objects of your photo. You have to be very careful with that. Otherwise, you're going to have these weird outlines around objects. So right now it's +10. If you crank this all the way up, it like overdoes it, and then the camera noise comes back quite a bit. So that's why I stay away from that. Now, the beginning stages of my photo career, I would use a lot of clarity and crank that up really high. And then as I continue to take photographs and I kind of grew as a fine art photographer, then I began to use less and less of clarity. Dehaze is very good. It has a simulated haze, or you can remove haze from your photo. For this one, I didn't move it. There is some haze in the photograph, but I like it. But at the same time, I don't want to add any more. But you can definitely add like a lot of haze to it. Or you can take away. And again, there's nothing wrong with like taking this down, but then I lose like a lot of color, especially towards the bottom. That green that I wanted to come out more, it just starts to disappear. And then this color, of course, I lose that completely. Obviously, grain is absolutely 0 because it adds film grain to the photograph, so I never want to use that. It's like very rarely. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and move my camera out of the way so you guys can see what I'm doing. All right, so then we got detail down here. Now, you can take a lot of noise out of the photo with luminance. So this is the manual noise reduction. I've got it at 70 right now. And then I also have the color at 70. In detail, I leave them because at standard, the base is 50. The contrast, I don't move it. So there's that. But yeah, there's still some noise in here. If you crank it all the way up to 100 and you let it process, it's going to take out more. But what I'm trying to avoid is a manufactured look. I don't want it to look like I took camera noise out. So I don't mind some graininess just as long as it's not too much. Yeah, so now at 100, the photo looks too smooth. It almost looks like wet paint, which again, if that's the look you're going for, great. But for me, I'm thinking I like the luminance at 70 to let some of the texture come through. Because then for me, it's like the flower is more tangible instead of it coming across as like a computer generated floral. And then again, the color down here is at 70, reduces the color noise. And the color noise is more like the aberration, I believe, which is down here, which is towards the bottom here. Let me zoom out. So again, if I kick up the shadows, because right now they're at 15, but if I go to 100, there's the color aberration there. So if you're gonna stay with your shadows way up and you're trying to cut down the aberration, I would definitely try color. That's under the detail adjustment. If you kick that all the way to 100, because I had it at 70, it's gonna do the best it can to fix that, but ultimately it's gonna be hard to get that much color aberration out of your photo. I mean, because even if I combine it to the luminance, kick it up to 100, along with keeping the color at 100, it's gonna soften that blow a little bit, so it's not so pronounced. But yeah, to me it looks more computer generated this way. Alright, so we took those back down to 70. But yeah. And obviously in Photoshop, if you open object and it opens into Photoshop, there's noise reduction tools in there, but I don't like using those because I feel like working with the digital file, the original raw file in Camera Raw is just better in terms of quality, keeping as much quality as you possibly can before you bring it over into Photoshop. So I've got the shadows back down to 15. But that's what you'll have to go over. Now, it's a little bit messy. I'm not sure how much that's going to show. So yeah, test it out. I would say initially, if you're testing a lot of photos, I would say a 12 by, well, not a 12, but a 4 by 6, just a small print. On whatever type of paper you're going to use, you can test it and see how much of it shows up. And then if it looks okay, then I would try it at a 12-inch by 18-inch print. Same thing, whichever paper you want to print it on at a really large size, then yeah, initially test it out on a 4 by 6 inch. If that looks right, run another test on a 12 by 18, because obviously on a larger paper size, you're going to have chances of more noise and color aberration showing up. But that's pretty much what I do. And most photo labs will let you order test prints, right? And a lot of times they'll send them with watermarks all over the image, but you'll still be able to see most of your photo. So you'll just check for the color aberrations, how much camera noise is coming through. And like I said, I'm not really concerned about the highlights. It's more so the midtones going into your shadows can be an issue. And now Photoshop, under filter, you have a noise option. You have add noise, which again, I don't know why someone would use that. And you have reduce noise here. And again, it gives you a really close up preview is the word I'm looking for of your work. And obviously you can zoom out. But especially over here in this little corner, that can potentially be a problem. Yeah, so it actually doesn't look too bad here. So there's the strength. My strength is at 6. Preserve details. I'm going to go to 100. Reduce color noise. I'm going to kick it up to 50. And then remove JPEG artifact. And it says toggle to remove block artifacts. And I think that's only for JPEG images, right? So if you have a JPEG with a lot of noise and you want to clean it up, which means that you don't have access to the raw file, then you would definitely click this this box or check this box. Sharpen details, I'm going to leave that at 25%, which is the default, I believe. So, yeah. And make sure when you're testing out these adjustments that your preview box is on, it's checked, the box is checked for preview, so you get a live look at what your adjustments are doing. And again, for me, I like zooming out and trying to make sure that it doesn't look manufactured. Once you find something that you like, you just click OK. Now I'm going to move my camera out of the way again to show you guys something. Over here in the corner, this is your smart filter. So which I've mentioned before, when you pull an image from Camera Raw, you make sure you open it as an object. So then any changes that you make in Photoshop, you can toggle your edits on and off. It's not a permanent adjustment. So that's also helpful. So if you mess something up, it's not destroying your original photo. So yeah, that's why I always suggest to people that they, or recommend that they bring in their raw photos as smart objects. So then when you apply a filter, it'll turn into a smart filter. In this case, it's reduce noise. And you can just click the eye icon to toggle your adjustments off and on. So right now we can turn it off. Let's see. There we go. Off. Let me see if I can go in here. Okay, so it's off. Now what happens if I turn it back on? Yeah. And again, now if you adjust it in Camera Raw, you bring it into Photoshop and reduce the noise again. Just be careful because you don't want to over edit the photograph. And then also up here is your history panel. It's going to keep track of everything that you do. So it's another way to go back and forth as far as undoing and redoing. So it keeps track of like all of your commands. If you toggle something on or off, there's a description, a short description here of everything that you're doing. So that's also helpful. And then obviously once you are done, let's see. Okay, my dialog box came up in the right spot. Great. So I'm going to save as copy. And I just want to see what the JPEG file looks like. I'm going to rename this test tag. I'm going to put gray for Mac Mini. Golly, it's not going in the right folder automatically for some reason. Hold on. I'm not sure why I didn't come up in the right folder. This is December 21. Or was it December 20th? Yeah, the 20th. There we go. And we're going to take a look at it in Adobe Bridge before I go. So again, go ahead and save. Make sure your embed color is checked. Large file, 12. As far as quality, maximum is good. And I just want to see. Yeah, it's darker down here than I would like. And then for Adobe Bridge, I can tag this red. I don't think I have a gray tag for it, but so this is the one we just did. This is the old file with more light, but I can see the noise right now. Yeah, so this is the part where I wanted to stay away from that, which means that this looks fine, but up here looks too dark. So what's going to end up happening is I'm going to have to edit this separately. I'm going to have to keep the shadows down here low on the darker end so that noise is not jumping out at me. But then I'm going to have to come in here and brighten a lot of this. And I'm trying to think of ways that I can do well, there's a few ways. I don't think I want to go into the dodging and burning. Burning, obviously, it darkens whatever you brush, and dodging, it brightens whatever you brush. But I'm thinking that overall, I want this to look more natural. So maybe I can just lift the shadows up here while keeping the shadows low down here. That's my thinking. All right, so let me try something. All right, so that was my my suggestion for you guys, and now I am just going by personal preference of what I want to do. Now they changed, with the new update, they changed the user interface up here. So I'm still getting used to where everything is. Yeah, see, they added all these features. Okay, very helpful. Oh, yeah, I don't want that. Let me see if I can do this right. Go to brush. There we go. And that's all I want to do. Now, you see there's really two circles. The first, or the smaller circle in the center, is where the brush actually is. And I believe the larger circle is your fall off, because it's more like a gradient. It goes from solid to transparent. Alright, so now what do I want to do? I want to kick up the shadows. So let me move my camera again and show you guys what I'm going to do. I want to kick up all the shadows up here, maybe a little bit down here, and then everything that's in the background that's coming through, I want to leave that dark. So I've got my brush. I selected the masking brush up here. And I'm going to go to light, go to shadows, and I'm going to kick up the shadows all the way up to 100. Now I can adjust this once I've brushed everything up. I can adjust the shadows up or down, but I just want to brighten all this up here. That's a lot better. Okay. I'm going to make this a little smaller. And to do this, I'm just using my brackets on the keyboard because it's a lot faster to do it. And just color this in. careful down here. Okay. Now there are some more petals over here, but I really don't want to mess with those because I know that color aberration is over there pretty strongly. So let me back out a little bit more. All right. Now if I come back over here to shadows, yep, I can still adjust it. So I put it all the way at 100 so that I can see where my adjustments are going. And then if it's too bright, I can just crank it down. I'll probably say in the 50s. Somewhere about there. And then my highlights, I don't want to push them too much, but just a little bit more. And you see a little brush icon. So now the adjustments that I'm making is only being applied to where I painted the mask. And this works the same way in Photoshop, but like I said, in Camera Raw, I just like working on the raw file. Yeah, so I think that's fine. And then there's a bunch of other adjustments down here. Same thing, texture, clarity, dehaze, everything's down here. Yeah, so I think that's good. Now, what I was saying before about opening up your image as a smart object is over here in the very corner. It says open object. If you click the little down arrow over here in the corner, then you'll see it says open, open as object, or open as copy. So for me, I always select open as object so that it's there. Yeah, see, that looks better. That looks better. Yeah, so that was the old version, and then this is the new one. So the shadows near the bottom stay pretty much the same, especially that greenish color in the background. But then everything up here is a lot brighter. So what I would do is, if that's still, like if you come down here and you still see too much of the grain in the color aberration, then you can either do it in Photoshop or you can do it in Camera Raw. But I would definitely do the same thing, edit it separately. And just anything that's down here in the shadows, you can select that. Or you can apply an adjustment brush to it. Now, if you're in Photoshop And you want to do that. You have you have curves, you have levels, you have exposure. There's some different ways that you can do that. You also have burning, but I really don't want to do that. So I will just let's go with the levels because it's very simple to do that. So here's your levels. Your shadows are here, and then your midtones, and then your highlights. And then as you move those dials, those pointers, that's the part of the image that moves, right? So let me go back out. I'm looking at just the shadows. So what I would do in this case, and I'm on my levels right here, move your shadows to where you want them to be. Right, but now you see it blanketed the entire thing. So what you would have to do is you see your mask box right here on levels. You would click on that and you would have to fill it to black. So I believe, because I haven't done this in a while, paint bucket tool, make sure that your color swatch is on black, so I'm going to swap that to black, and then you would click onto your photo, and now the mask is filled with black, which means you turned off your adjustments. Now you want to turn them on just where you want it to be on, where you want the shadows to be darker, which means that you have to come to your brush tool up here. And the shortcut is just press the letter B on the keyboard. So there's that. There's my brush. Let me enlarge it more. So now you got your brush tool, right? You have to change your color swatch to white because you can toggle that back and forth over here. Change it to white. So make sure you're still on your layer mask and you're going to paint white onto the mask, but you're just going to paint it where you want it. I don't want to get in here too close because I want to make sure this doesn't look weird. But you just paint it on. If you haven't used your brush in a while, because now this looks weird, come up here. Yeah, that's what it is, my hardness. So this is the size of your brush, just how big your circle is. That's what this part up here is. The hardness is your fall off. You can either have like a little bit of fall off, or the circle that you paint can be solid, and you never want it to be solid because then everything will look artificial. So I'm going to take the hardness all the way down to 0. So I have plenty of fall off. And you want to gradually go from the petal to the shadow, right? Yeah, see, now it's softer. You don't want the edge. You don't want to have edges that have a hard line to them. Because again, you don't want people to know that you painted the shadows darker on here. And it will be the same thing, that once you paint or brush wherever you want your shadows to be really dark, you can adjust the darkness, how dark it is, how light the shadows are, or how much detail shine through. You can adjust that by adjusting the shadow dial, or adjustment on your levels. So I think I want a little bit here. That's too much. I'm gonna leave that one. And again, you're on your levels adjustment layer, so you're not actually doing anything to the original file. You can turn this on and off as much as you want. Yeah, that's too much. All right, go back out. And let me go back to levels, the levels box. Hold on. I would have to click the icon here. So now my shadows are at 13. They started at 0 as a default, and I kicked them up to 13. And again, if you kick them all the way up, the bottom's going to go black. If it goes back down to 0, all that green color is going to come back out. At this point, I'm thinking that I'm just going to darken everything down there to get rid of that color. But that means I would have to be careful because my petals are going to look like they're stamped on. So now I'm going to have to gradually dim the edges so that they fall into the background. And it doesn't look like that really sharp edge is there. So again, I'm going to change the swatch color to white. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. That's what happens if you're not on the mask. If you're on the levels icon instead of on the mask icon, you're going to paint white onto the photo. And I just want to see if I can paint this out. It's coming out too heavy. So I'm going to change the opacity up here to 50% so it's see-through. Hold on, I lost you guys. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to try that again. There we go. So now you just paint the edges down a little bit, like the brightness of it. Just get that to come down enough. But you can still see some of the background through it. There we go, that's better. And basically it's like shaping the composition. And again, I'll go back up to here to history. If a certain stroke is a little bit off, you can turn it on, turn it off, and then try again. That was a little bit better. Hold on. There we go. That was better. All right. So yeah, you really is a little bit more finesse and trial and error when it comes to how you want to brighten or add shadow, especially if it's a fall off effect, right? Because you can't have a stark jump from mid-tone to shadow, or highlight to shadow, of course, or even highlight to mid-tone. It has to be a gradual flow from one tone to the next. So I guess a really good example, let me change mine to the move icon. Really good example would be in here. You see that gradual transition. You got a lot of highlight. It shifts to the mid-tones. And then it gets a little bit of shadow in here, but it doesn't look awkward. But yeah, light, mid-tone, more shadow, and everything looks natural. So you want that effect everywhere. Let me go down here and see what we are looking at. All right. I think that works. I like it. I like it. I like it. Okay, so this particular file is the copy that I created. It's, let's see, 12 by 18, 300 points per inch. All right. And if you don't know what your resolution on the file is, let's see. You can check your image size. So I go Command Option I, the letter I. Command Option I, or I believe you can, what's the manual way of doing this? I haven't done it through the menu in so long to check my, oh, here we go, image size. So you would come to image, come down to image size. There's your dialog box, but I don't like going all the way up there. I just go Command Option, the letter I, and it pops up. So obviously here, your resolution, it'll tell you this is 300 pixels. This is how many pixels you have. You can change it to inches or centimeters, depending on what you use, to see how large your file is. And then obviously you can enlarge the file with preserve detail. So yeah, preserve detail enlargements. But yeah, that's if you don't know. That's really any image. Like if you just pull a JPEG into Photoshop and you want to know what the resolution is, like if the JPEG is printable or not, then you would just check the image size and it'll tell you if it's at 300. If it's not, if it's below 300, then you run the risk of the image not looking clear. It may look pixelated when you print it out, especially if it's under 200 pixels per inch. So you can always ask your printer what their minimum resolution should be, but standard, the resolution should be 300 on whatever you send to the printer. And that can be at a 4x6 inch or, a 30 by 45 inch. The pixels at minimum should be at 300. So that's what I always go by. All right, so what I'm going to do is save this. Now, there is one more step if you want to enlarge this print. It's going to be a little bit tricky, not difficult, but it's extra steps. But what you would do, you would come back to your raw file and you would come back to your raw file. You would expand it or enlarge it, or at least that's what I do. And then you would drag your levels over to it. But before you drag your levels over to it, you would have to expand this photo as well to the same size. So a lot of times I would want to go, I want to print a 40-inch by 60-inch print, which is crazy large. So that's what I would do with this particular print. And then I would also take the raw file, expand it to 40 by 60 inches. And then open it up in Photoshop. And then I would drag the levels to that raw file so that the edits that I made in Photoshop will match. And that may seem like a lot, but that's definitely what I do. I am hesitating to try that now because I don't want to bog down my computer, even though it should be able to do it. Okay, so if I'm gonna try this, I'll show you guys what I'm doing here first. I'm going to add my signature too while I'm at it. And now that I have a third screen, let me see if this works the way that I think. All right, so this is my iPad, and I updated the Mac OS yesterday or the day before yesterday, and now it started picking up my iPad as a third monitor. So, hallelujah, thank the Lord they added this. I mean, goodness, I've been trying to do this for a while now. But it picked it up through Bluetooth, so now I can mirror or extend my main computer monitors to the iPad. Okay, so there's my cursor. I'm gonna need to drag this over. Okay, good. Now, normally I would have to move the Photoshop file onto the Adobe Cloud so that my iPad has access to it, which is just an extra annoying step to do. But now, since the operating system has been updated, it can finally detect that my iPad is sitting here and I can just connect to it through Bluetooth. And now I can include it onto the stream. It still shows up as that square like format, but that's better than where it was. And then the other thing too is that if you use Photoshop on iPad, you don't have all of the features, right? You just don't. All right, let me see here. So yeah, it's on here now. That is so crazy. Anyway, I got my Apple Pencil. I'm gonna go ahead and make another layer. Can I use my keyboard now with this? Hold on. Yep, I sure can. Good. My iPad actually has a separate keyboard, but I don't want to use it right now. All right, so there's signature, and then I'm going to it's acting weird now. Hold on. Oh, I gotta use my trackpad still. Okay, never mind. I'm used to using the touch screen over here to move this. So, Apple Pencil. Gonna come to the brush. Okay, so I can still use this touch screen. It's just weird moving the photo with the navigation. Let's see, the brush size. I'm gonna say 12. And press enter. I lost you guys again. All right, so that means that my OBS software that I'm recording this on is reading all of my keys, which means that I have to turn the hotkeys off on OBS so it doesn't change my my screen anytime I use numbers or click on numbers with Photoshop. That's good to know. All right. So my brush is on white with a color swatch, size 13. What about hardness? I'll throw it up a little bit. Go to 50. Oh no, that's not right. Hold on. I can't sign it like this. All right, that's better. Now, the pencil doesn't actually work with the trackpad. It only works with the iPad. So that's a bummer. Because then it'll be easier for me to sign things. But I can only sign it by hand on the iPad. But like I said, since the iPad is hooked up to the Mac Mini now, as far as reading it as a third monitor, that does make it easier. Easier process. And let me see, fine tuning. I'm going to do that over here on Asus. Hold on. There we go. All right. Fine tuning the signature. It looks pretty good, actually. Let's see. Make sure I'm on the right one. That's a little large. Command T to transform. I'm going a little bit smaller. Enter. That looks pretty good. Go letter V to go back to my move tool so I don't paint anything or draw anything. If I want it, because right now it looks fine as far as the line thickness. If I wanted to adjust that, you would, hold on, I forgot. Let me go back to Aces. Now, this looks fine. If you want to adjust it, you would come up to select. Let's see. I believe it was select. I'm looking for modify. It's blacked out. Hold on. I'm missing a step, I think. Yeah, I'm missing a step. But really it would be modify and then you would contrast. Let's see. Here it is. I think it moved. Okay, so I don't think it was there before. Select pixels. There it is. Select, modify. I knew I wasn't going crazy. Contract. And because it's already really thin, I don't want to go 2 pixels, but I just go 1. And click OK. So what it does is going to thin the lines 1 pixel inward. So then what you want to do is click on, at the bottom, the layer mask button. And that's going to thin it out. But now to me it's too thin. So I'll come up here to my history panel and just go back to where it was before. Because this is before, this is after. Now again, if your lines are too thick, you can trim them down using that technique. So there's that. And the lighting in here has gotten really bright. Hold on again. Okay, that's better. All right, so now Command 0, go back out and look at it. What do you guys think? I mean, I like it. I'm thinking, is it too Did I take out too much texture? That's what I'm wondering. Yeah, it's very soft. Okay, that's better. I'm thinking right in here. Yeah, I think that's good. Now, obviously, there would be less grain down here if I would have had more light from the start and brightened the petals correctly with enough light. But as it is, I think it's a little bit moody because of the grain. Yeah, it really is. So I'm gonna stay with that. I'm gonna stay with that. Let's see, and make Command Shift S, and that'll bring up your Save As dialog box. Is Command Shift S. The dialog box pops up. You can add a tag for Apple. Usually for Photoshop, I use purple. And go ahead and save it, and it is going in the correct folder this time. And this isn't the print size. This is the original 12 by 18 size, like default out of the camera. So there it is. And now I'm going to add the label. Well, change the label to purple so I know what it is. It should change to purple here. There we go. And then obviously that's to help with your labels here. If you just want to see Photoshop files, you just click on the purple. And if I wanted to see all of the raw files that I selected, I just click on blue. And especially if you have hundreds of photos, if you stick to the labeling system, you can get through everything pretty quickly. The green is actually the print file. Yellow is in my social media, small JPEGs for that. The red is the 12 by 18 file that sometimes I put these on ViewBug. But yeah, those are there. And then sometimes I use these as my test files to see what, how they print. This one came out really blurry in the print, and that's why it's not. Because I really do like this photo, but when you print it out, it's way too soft, and I don't think I can tighten up the texture or the clarity to fix it. So that's a bummer. But yeah, I have a lot of files. And the only thing that I'm looking through is composition. That's it, just composition, really. You know, once I find a composition that I like, then I go through this whole process of trying to get it put together the way that I want. So, yeah. And then the rest, I have in a folder, and after a while, if I'm completely sure that I'm not going to use it, I'll go ahead and start deleting things. But right now, I just haven't done that yet to the newer stuff. But yeah, I'm just looking for composition and seeing what looks like it has potential. If the composition is off, if the focal point is off or non-existent, then I can't do anything with it. And I had trouble with my focal point because there was not enough light. So you really can't see, like when your depth of field is really small and you're taking macro photography. That does happen when you take macros. Your depth of field is very short. So it's easy for your focal point to be off. And when you look at the photograph, it's just soft. There's really nothing that's crystal clear. So it's easier to miss if you don't have enough to illuminate the subject. So yeah, all of these are from December 2021. And obviously, where do I get flowers? I get flowers from the fresh market. Sometimes you can find stuff at Target, Walmart, but the fresh market is like the best place. And I believe they have florals at Whole Foods. They have quite a few, but I haven't purchased from them before as far as florals. So, but yeah, they have like a very good fresh market, and Whole Foods have a very good selection of flowers that you can practice photographing. So yeah, so now I can send this off as a 4x6 or order a 4x6 test print on this and see if this part down here, if it looks odd or off. I don't know, but that's the best I can do with it at this point. I might darken the petals a little bit with the masking that I did before to add more shadows to the edges. Other than that, I think I'm going to end there. Yeah. Oh, and then there's that one other thing I was going to show you guys about the enlargements. So with enlarging, again, Command Option I, the letter I. Command Option I, you would switch this to preserve details, enlargement, reduce noise. Yes, 100%. And then you would change the size, because right now it's 12.48 with height is 18.72. I would make this, because 40 by 60 would be pushing it. with this amount of grain. So I would go 30-45, width 30, height 45. Again, make sure you have your reduce noise up. You just click OK. So there we go. And again, make sure that when you do this, your original photograph is a smart object. Otherwise, the pixels are going to get all spread out and your photo is going to look a mess. Or in some cases, if you have enough pixels there, it'll look fine. But then when you print it, it's going to be blurry, like pixelated really badly. All right. So whatever size you pick, remember what size you picked as far as when you enlarge it in Photoshop. You're going to have to drag your signature layer and then your levels layer over to the raw file, which I'm going to create now. So here's the raw file we were working on. I'm going to open it in Camera Raw. Let me make sure my camera's not in the way. Okay. So we come down here to the center bottom of the dialog box and you click on the words down here. That's going to bring up the pop-up box and you select resize to fit and you select the exact same size as you selected in Photoshop. So it's going to be a 30 width by 45 height. Sorry about that. And let's see. Open in Photoshop as Smart Object. Your resolution is 300. All right, and just click OK. So now you have a negative file that's 30 by 45 inches. So you go ahead and open that up as an object. And hopefully the computer won't have a breakdown. Because these are big files. Yay, it opened. All right. Now, there's one more step. So here's the file that you just opened up from Camera Raw. You go back to the Photoshop file that you enlarged. And let me move my camera out of the way. There's your signature file. And then you hold down the Shift key. You also select the levels file. And then you pick both of those up. If I can do this correctly. So you have both layers, signature and levels. You drag it up to the tab of the file from Adobe Camera Raw. Now, before you drop it, you have to hold down the Shift key. Hold down Shift and then drop it. And as you can see, the signature fell in the exact spot it was. So when you go back to the original file, Command 0, that's where everything is. When you come here, everything's in the same spot. So you just know that when you move it, the placement's the same. Because if you don't hold down the Shift key, the Photoshop is going to drop the information wherever. It's going to be off. And you're going to have to move it manually into place, which is a pain. So now this is my Adobe Raw file. The only thing I end up doing is I go Command Shift S for the save as dialog box to come up, and then save a copy. The print file is tag green, so there's that. And then I'm going to send them a JPEG. I'm going to change the name. Signature print. And usually that's all I put is signature print after the original name. But in this case, I'm going to put 30x45 to let me know that this is a smaller file, print file than usual, because usually it's 40 by 60, just standard 40 by 60. And save. Click OK. And down here in the corner, you see the little blue bar comes up. And once that disappears, your file's ready. Now, this is the file again that I pulled from Camera Raw. I'm not going to save it as a Photoshop file because if you save a 30 by 45 inch file as a Photoshop file, it's going to be massive. And you're going to chew up hard drive space really, really fast. So I'm not going to save that, which is why I have this image over here, which I'm going to, I did expand it, right, to 30 by 45, but it's not going to stay that way. I'm going to leave it, I'm going to take it back down to the 12 by 18 inch, which you can check it again, 12.48, 18.72, resolution's good. So that's what I'm going to stick with there. And then the file that I got from Adobe Camera Raw, and I dragged everything over. I'm just going to close that out. Don't save. Here we go. And that is the process. Now, if you're just starting out with this software, I'm hoping that I didn't confuse a bunch of people. But that's the process that I go through. And yes, if I enlarge this file in Photoshop, feel free to just save it as your print file, as a JPEG, same thing. Command Shift S, there's a dialog box, and again, feel free to save it as a JPEG file. You go through the same thing, save as copy. I use the color green for me, but you guys, whatever system that you have, I would suggest putting a color there, labeling it, and having that label match what's in Adobe Bridge, or if you have color swatches or color labels in Lightroom, you can do that, but just have them match. But yeah, you can do that and, save it directly through Photoshop without pulling it, doing the whole enlarging and all that with Adobe Camera Raw. But for me, I go through the longer process simply because I feel like in comparison, the quality from Camera Raw is better when I enlarge a print. But yeah, so now I can go ahead and close it out. Don't save because I already saved the 12 by 18 before. And that's it. That is all. Now this stuff is on the cloud. And I'm going to make sure that I'm finished with these, which I should be. And then I'm going to take them off the cloud because I don't like having my files on the cloud. Because people on the other side of the world can hack into whether it's Adobe servers or whatever service you're using and pull a bunch of information off of there. So I usually do pull stuff off the cloud. I believe that is it. And we're just going to go with that. As far as prints, this is my print file, so I'm going to go Command, I think it's Command 8. There we go, and change it to green. So yeah, that's what I've got. The test print, of course, I can use just the 12 by 18 for a test print. I don't have to send the printer the largest file, but if the test print is fine, then the large file is already here. And then if the test print comes out really weird and I need to make adjustments, then I'll just replace this with whatever I change it to. If it comes out too pixelated, well, not pixelated, what's the word I'm looking for? Too much noise, or the color aberration is really bad still, then I won't be able to use it. But at least I got it to a point where I'm happy with it. Actually, I think both of these are wrong. Yeah, they are. I really changed it to dark, which means that I'm going to have to replace both of these. Delete. I'm going to need a new red one. So yeah. And I don't think that I'm going to pull, or at least attempt to pull, anything else from this folder. Yeah. I will skim through it to make sure. But I don't think so. Oh, that's actually not bad. But this part here is like, whoa. It looks weird, doesn't it? And again, that's because if you're shooting macro, the focal point fall off is so stark that, I mean, it just depends. Like, some of it can look awkward, but there's your focal point right there in the center. And then everything behind that, everything in front is, especially up here in the foreground, is really out of focus. So it just looks odd. And a lot of this is just searching for the right composition to see what works. Yeah. And then I ended up going with something like this instead of having more of the background in there. And I probably redid this one a little bit, but this is the old version. And this one's actually in the inventory online. This one was okay, but the composition was too far over here. It was off. So Yeah, I have to go through here and start getting rid of some of these. And then this other folder that's all the way at the end. Oh, there's actually some stuff in here. Yeah, so I can combine these two and move everything. But yeah, and then the sidebar over here, this is years of it's just photographs. So everything's organized though. I mean, I have everything labeled correctly, which is very helpful. It's just a lot. It's a lot of photography. But thank you guys for tuning in. I did not mean to go for this long, but the last thing that I'll say is I don't know if everyone uses Apple. I mean, I switched from PC to Apple, is it 2 years ago now? A year and a half, something like that. It's a little bit frustrating because I think with PC it's a lot easier to connect multiple monitors and put certain equipment in sync. But in terms of the cloud and having a software connected, I like Apple better. It's just the things like this where I couldn't connect the iPad with the other two monitors, and then it took me a while to figure out how to have the Samsung and the Asus read correctly. And then there's the refresh rate, the color profile that I'm still trying to figure out which is which, because now it's listing all of my profiles the same. But it's supposed to only be one. So I'm going to figure this out, which one it's supposed to be. But yeah, when they make an update, which we've had quite a few updates lately, they're adding a lot to the menus. But yeah, like I said, now we have a feature up here where you click on this. This is my secondary. This is the iPad. You can rearrange your displays, that type of thing. So it's really needed. It's just figuring out how it works. And I think as they continue to add things, it'll make working on Mac a lot better. It's just the PC had this capability like years ago, several years ago, and Apple's more they're more careful about adding things and letting you move your windows around and customize things. Like the customization part of it, they're really slow about letting us do that. But yeah, I'm happy that they're finally like loosening their grip on the user interface and what we can add to it, because otherwise they want everything to be Apple, as far as the system and everything in sync goes. So like my headphones, I mean, thank goodness I can actually link them with Bluetooth. But if you buy Apple's headphones, they only work on Apple products, which is weird. So I can't use it with my console or anything else. It's just weird. They're headphones. So yeah, I hope that because I've heard really good things about their headphones, but they've got to loosen up their grip a little bit on, or continue to do so on, what we can connect their products with. And I think that's all I've got. So yeah, I'm going to continue to tweak my setup here. And hopefully I'm almost done. I think the only thing left is my external solid state drive. I'm missing that. I do have the normal one, external hard drive, but the solid state drives, they're more expensive, yes, but they last a lot longer. Because I have about 3 externals now that are practically in storage because they finally gave out. So I'm using my iPad, an external, and then I do have a little bit of space on my Mac Mini as backups. But yeah, I think I definitely need, I'm going to say like a 4 terabyte solid state external, and probably get a couple of those, and then those will be my backups. But for right now, I've got enough space for everything, and I'm just going from here. So thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Take care.